All right. Good evening, everyone. Rhori Johnston sitting in the open line chair on this Thursday night. We appreciate you joining us. We are live tonight, and we are expecting some phone calls tonight, 737+. We hope you will call in. Tonight, we welcome our guest. He is the head of the local FOP, Fraternal Order of Police. I believe, Mr. Smallwood, it is the Andrew Jackson Lodge. Is that where you are located, sir?
That's correct.
James Smallwood is with us, a familiar face representing the Fraternal Order of Police here in the Nashville area. And I'll apologize to our viewers. I told Mr. Smallwood I have a allergic cough. It is not coronavirus. I've been tested and I'm negative. It's just some seasonal allergies that are driving me nuts right now. I want to start, Mr. Smallwood, by just acknowledging some sad news in law enforcement here locally today. We know the Brentwood Police Department is mourning the loss, and the first time in the 50 years of that police force, the loss of an officer in the line of duty, and that was Officer Destin Legeza this morning in a terrible car crash on Franklin Road. We send our condolences to his family. I understand he was a third-generation police officer. His dad, a lieutenant with the Franklin Police Department. How does the FOP respond in a case like this?
Well, you know, the loss of any life is tragic, but when we lose one of our members, it's our role to step in and be there for anything that the family may need. You know, that is a very tragic time, especially something like this where they've lost their lives in a car crash. And, you know, the family needs several different kinds of support, whether it be to get through the grieving process or to get through some of the administrative processes with the departments. And FOP stands ready to serve and make sure that no fallen hero is ever forgotten, and that no fallen hero's family is ever left behind. And we stand here to make sure that never happens.
Tell me what it has been like. 2020, everyone's kind of making memes and jokes about what a crazy year it has been, but obviously it has brought up some serious issues. And I think you're not one to shy away from a good conversation and a good, strong debate about the issues facing law enforcement today and how they interact in the community. How do you reach out right now during this time of kind of crisis in law enforcement and throughout the country as we're seeing this cultural kind of shift and protests and demonstrations?
Well, you know, the catalyst of all the, I guess you could call chaos that we're seeing around us in the last few weeks is George Floyd's death. And you've seen every law enforcement organization, ours included, and almost every law enforcement agency come out and say that was a horrible situation. It should have never happened, and justice will be served. And we think that process is playing out in Minnesota now. Certainly those officers have been charged and they're going to have to answer for what they did. That being said, I think while the protests are certainly understandable, people saw that and they're hurting, and the FOP and its members are hurting right alongside them. We are just as angry that happened as anybody else is. But we need to come to the table and we need to have conversations. And until we start talking and sharing each other's perspectives and understanding that law enforcement officers are here to serve the community. We are here to help. And sometimes things don't always turn out the way we want them to, but that is the reality of the job we do. And I think if we can get to that point where folks want to have conversations and share perspectives, FOP is going to be the first at the table to have those. And hopefully we can find a way to bring harmony back.
Tell me, in these past weeks, obviously officer morale has taken a hit. I've heard and read stories all across the country about officers who are seriously considering a different line of work, and there's also concerns among administrative folks that recruiting is now going to be much more difficult in police departments, police forces, law enforcement forces around the country. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, we were already facing somewhat of a nationwide recruitment epidemic and retention epidemic, but this has only made that problem larger. Law enforcement officers take this job because they want to help. They want to make the world a better place. They want to serve their community, and they're highly scrutinized, and they should be. And when bad officers are found, they should be weeded out. But unfortunately, the large majority of officers who come to work to do good are painted in the same stroke as those officers who have done things that they should not have done. And when you come here and you're not making a lot of money, you're not doing this job to get rich, you're doing this job to help, and a person can only take so much berating. So when they're constantly hearing that they are the enemy, when they're hearing things that people are saying to them on protest lines that you would never say to somebody in public because it's just not a decent thing to say, it certainly brings into question whether or not they want to continue doing this career, and they're making that decision.
So how do you address that then, going forward?
Yeah. I think it goes back to what I just talked about. We need to be having productive conversations with our community. Our community needs to understand that we're here to help. We are community servants. We're partners, not public enemies. And we need to get beyond the rhetoric and the hate and have real perspectives at the table with reasonable fact-based conversations. And everybody needs to understand that there are two sides to every story.
Yeah. All right. We've got much more to talk about, including Metro Nashville's Metro Council's budget and also some news from Metro Nashville Police Department today. Their leadership looks like it will be changing in the coming months. We'll talk about that, but we got a number of calls we're going to get to, and we're going to start with them right now. And we'll go to line one, and that is Joe. First to call in tonight. Hi, Joe. What's on your mind?
Just a couple of comments. I stand behind the Metro Nashville Police Department 100%, but I wish every citizen in Davidson County could spend one shift with a policeman and see what they have to put up with a lot of times and hold their composure. You're gonna have something happen every now and then. That's just human nature, and you can't expect 100% of the police to be perfect. They're human beings just like anybody else. Sometimes they have to make a decision in a split second. Sometimes it's not a good decision, but most of the time they handle it the best they can. So I back them 100%, and like Mr. Smallwood said, that I think more talking, more rhetoric with these people would probably help. But burning and looting and that kind of stuff, that's not going to get it.
Joe, thank you for your call. I appreciate it very much. Thank you. Let's just end that right there. So you have support in the community, right, James?
Yeah, Vanderbilt just released a poll that said 86% of Nashville's community supports Nashville's law enforcement officers. Unfortunately, what we need today is those silent majority to step up and tell their elected officials, we support our law enforcement officers, we support what they're doing. They're not being heard. Their voices are being silenced by a louder group of people who have a message that they want to be heard. But I think everybody's voices need to be heard at the table so that we can get an accurate perspective. But and I appreciate Joe's comment. I think it's important that folks do see what an officer deals with on their shift. I think body cameras are going to address some of that, but I think officers need to sign, or our community needs to sign up with their commanders at each precinct and ask for a ride along. Go out there and sit next to an officer for 8.5 hours and see what they deal with on a day in and day out basis. Get a firsthand perspective rather than just the rhetoric that's being spun around.
I was going to mention there are programs for civilians that are well publicized that you can sign up for, whether it's one shift or whether it's multiple weeks, correct?
Yeah, we have a Citizens Police Academy in the police department where I think it's, I may be wrong, I think it's an 8-week program where you can come in and learn a vast majority of what the police department does, the different divisions or different sections, and what they all do and how they intertwine with our community. And of course, you can come in and talk to any of the commanders at any of the police precincts, any of the community coordinators, and say, I would like to ride along with a police officer just so I can experience for one day what they do. And as long as you've got a good background, that's something we are certainly open to having.
I want to go back to what you mentioned about that Vanderbilt poll and what you call the silent majority, that they need to speak up. In this current environment, at least at this point right now, would it be fair to say that a lot of those people are just afraid to speak up for fear of repercussions?
I think there's certainly some folks that are concerned. There are some folks that are afraid that if they say what they think and they support law enforcement, that, you know, having seen the historic courthouse on fire, they're worried that their house might be the next thing on fire. And we're certainly not asking you to take a public stance or march in the streets. While that would be nice to support law enforcement in that manner, you know, call your elected official, call the mayor, call the council members and tell them we support law enforcement. We want to see more support for law enforcement rather than less, so they can hear your voices be heard rather than just the rhetoric that's being spun around.
All right, James, we're going to take a quick break. We've got callers on the line and we've got other open lines. So callers out there or listeners, viewers, if you would like to call in at 737+, please do so. We're going to take a quick break and we'll be back with more Open Line right after this.